Chapter 6. Cameron Boxer. Can I take a bathroom break? I could always get out of Mrs. Herzlich's class that way. As I headed down the corridor, I was already scrolling through the apps on my phone. Bathroom break? Don't make me laugh. No self respecting gamer ever needed a bathroom break. I was a camel. I once battled zombies for 7 hours straight after drinking an entire half gallon of Gatorade. My back teeth were floating, but my mental discipline was 100%. I could have gone longer too if evil McKill people hadn't ended my run early. No, this was something different. A much needed stress reliever in the middle of a long school day. There was no console here, obviously, but a little clan warfare could be waged right on your phone. It wouldn't count as practice for Rule the World. On the plus side, though, evil McKill people wouldn't be able to muscle in. To be honest, I was starting to treasure the moments when I didn't have to worry about him crashing the party. The upstairs boys' room seemed empty, but on second look, all the stalls were occupied. I wasn't going to let that stop me. I hadn't come for the atmosphere. I leaned up against a sink and tapped the app on my screen. The game opened with the usual fanfare of horns, but as my well-fortified base appeared on my phone, I heard a second trumpeting, slightly muffled, from one of the stalls. "Chuck?" I asked. "No, it's me," came Pavel's voice from the center stall. "I'm over here," Chuck added from the far end. Another fanfare rang out, the final stall. The school could have saved a fortune on plumbing fixtures if they'd just put in a clan warfare room, but fat chance of that. We hadn't been playing very long when there was a sharp rap at the door. Who knocked to get into the boys' room? How polite could a guy be? "Sorry," called Chuck. "All full up in here." And then a man's voice asked, "Is Cameron Boxer in there?" I slid on my belly under a stall door, joining this kid Eric, who I didn't really know. He backed against the toilet tank and glared at me. I could relate. Gamers didn't like to have their space invaded, you know, unless they were playing Space Invaders. "Why'd you have to come in here?" he rasped in complaint. "You've got the handicap stall," I hissed. "It has the most room." There were footsteps in the bathroom. "Cameron Boxer?" the voice repeated. I froze like a scared rabbit, intent on waiting this teacher out. Unfortunately, one of the other guys panicked and exited the game. This brought on another fanfare. The trumpets echoed off the tile walls as if heralding the arrival of some royal prince. "Is that a cell phone?" the man asked suspiciously. In answer, all three toilets flushed at the same time. The voice was a little impatient now. "Cameron, is that you? Mrs. Herzlich told me I could find you here. I waited in the hall, but, well, now I suppose I know why you were taking so long. Don't worry, just this once. We'll forget about the cell phone." Totally caught. Curse you! "Mrs. Herzlich." I slipped through the door, careful not to reveal Eric, cowering behind me, his feet on the toilet seat. To my surprise, the teacher wasn't a teacher at all. It was a guidance counselor, Mr. Fan something, Fanstein, Fanboy, something like that. Just to make it look good, I washed my hands. It was none of Mr. Fanbloom's business what I was doing in that stall. He didn't seem mad that I was cutting class. As a matter of fact, he was smiling at me. That was almost scarier than the possibility of having my phone confiscated. It was bad enough that the guy knew my name, considering I hadn't done a single thing in more than 2 years to bring myself to his attention. The fact that he was happy to see me was weird. "Well, Cameron, I have to tell you, I'm impressed." Correction, weirder. "Our paths haven't crossed very often since you've been a student here," Mr. Fantasia went on, "so I suppose you can be excused for not knowing the rule." Rule? Another word I wasn't super fond of. All new school clubs have to be approved by the guidance department. So, what did that have to do with me? It was like he tracked me down to a bathroom stall to tell me the price of coconuts in Antarctica. I had to come right out and ask, "Mr. Sir, what are we talking about?" He gave me a conspiratorial look. "Daphne Leibowitz was in my office this morning. She's very excited about the positive action group." If he'd said I was about to be hung from the flagpole, I couldn't have been more shocked. The Positive Action Group? Nobody was supposed to know about that. The minute Daphne showed up on the step in front of what used to be my door, I should have known. There was no way that big mouth could keep quiet about the PAG, not while that beaver was still on the loose. But I couldn't mention any of that to Mr. Fandango. What exactly did Daphne say? I ventured. Just how excited she is, the counselor replied. She was anxiously awaiting your next meeting, and when it didn't happen, she became frustrated. Now the truth came out. It wasn't enough for Daphne to stalk me at my house and pull me away from my Rule of the World training. She had to bring the guidance department down on my head. I'd kind of hoped to make it all the way through middle school without having to deal with guidance, because those guys could be murder on your lifestyle. But I guess my luck had just run out. And what did you tell her? I managed, not really wanting to hear the answer. I told her there's nothing to worry about, he smiled even wider. Every school club has to have a faculty advisor. I'm yours. So whatever questions you may have, I'm at your disposal. He regarded me expectantly. That might have been the worst part. I didn't have any questions, and I definitely didn't want any answers. When I said nothing, Mr. Fanta probed. The first order of business should be to schedule a meeting, don't you think? I absolutely did not think. Still, I had to say something. The problem, I began wearily, is that we're so new. He nodded understandingly. Exactly how many members does the Positive Action Group have? Members? Exactly the same number as the Stick Your Head in the Furnace Club and the Leap the Grand Canyon Society. Well, there's me. I fell silent and started counting on my fingers. To make it look good, I was going to have to include Pavel and Chuck, but I didn't want to get them trapped in this by saying their names out loud. I counted Borge, too. Mr. Fancy Pants didn't have to know he was in Sweden. He could be head of PAG Europe. I threw in Evil McKill people, too, representing Canada, and also my sister Melody, a sixth grader here. She wouldn't be too pleased about it, but with any luck, she'd never find out. Oh, and Daphne, the only person on the list who actually wanted to be there. 7, I reported. That's a good core group, he approved. There's a lot of work to do, though. We're going to need more members if we're going to make a dent in the needs of this community. Speaking of which, did you know that Sycamore Middle School is sponsoring a raffle to raise money for the Salvation Army? That's something the PAG could latch onto and run with. When I didn't say anything, he added, Well, it's just an idea. We can worry about that later. The first order of business is recruiting. Why don't you see if Daphne can meet you in the art room after school to make some posters? There were times when you were playing a real battle game and you got pinned down, under fire, barely able to stay alive. That was how I had spent this whole face-to-face with Mr. Fantabulous, hunkered down, dodging bullets, trying not to get blown away. But in the game, sooner or later, your opponent would have to reload or respawn, or even kill a spider walking up his wall. It was your chance to become proactive, to jump out of hiding and take the initiative with your own plan. For the first time in this horrible conversation with Mr. Fanberg, a strategy opened up before me. The instant the final bell rang at 3 o'clock, I was going to be out of Sycamore Middle School so fast I'd leave a vapor trail behind me on the sidewalk. Daphne couldn't very well get mad at me for skipping out on a poster-making session she never knew existed. Sure, it was sleazy, and I felt a little bad about the dishonesty, but not bad enough to put myself into the frying pan. It was coming to me that all this was more than just a hiccup on the road to rule the world. It was a direct threat to the lifestyle I'd spent more than 13 years building up.